404, testing. Can all you fellas and dolls hear me out there?
No.
Testing. I'm gonna do another test. Can you guys hit refresh?
Testing.
Reporting live from Studio 404, testing. Can all you fellas and dolls hear me out there?
Yeah.
On this special New Year's Eve broadcast, we've got a show for you that's the bee's knees. We will be remembering some of the biggest events from the decade in sports, pop culture, and of course, the news. Here's Juliana to get us started.
Hi, I'm Juliana with the news. I will be telling you all what happened in February that dramatically happened the day we all know and love, Valentine's Day. It was the bloodiest day of the year for us. A lot of people lost their loved ones this year, and I feel bad for those people that went through that. Enough with that now. Let's have a look back to what that day was about. Capone wanted to bump off Moran, so he ordered an ambush. This is how the massacre started. Through informats, Capone knew that Moran's gang gathered regularly in a garage on North Clark Street to await the arrival of their liquor truck convos. The gunmen gained access to the garage by disguising themselves as Chicago police officers. Through the cash payoffs, Capone laid hold of some of the items a Chicago police officer had: police car, several police uniforms. Since the intended victims already knew most of the Capone mob, some of the members from the Purple Gang had to pose as one of the officers. When the men entered the garage, they came upon 7 men. The names of the men were Pete and Frank Ginsburg. These were the most dangerous gunmen. Adam Hare is going to be the bookkeeper for the gang. Albert Cashleek is Moran's brother-in-law. John May and Reinhard Schweimer, they are the minor gang figures. Lastly, Albert Weinshank. He has a physical resemblance to Moran and is a speakeasy operator. And this year, Lepke is working for crime boss Arnold Rothstein, while most other gangsters in this time are involved in the profitable bootleg gang business. Lepke wants to work in an area that has longevity. Lepke has also chosen labor racketeering as his specialty, together with his boyhood pal Augie Origin, who controlled the labor racketeering in New York. Hopefully there will be less crime in the 1930s. And now to Lakeisha with a look back with the crazy facts from the 20s.
Thanks, Juliana. Hi, I'm Lakeisha. Remember when we didn't really have a lot of things to do for fun? That certainly was not the case in the 1920s. Crazy fasts were a keen way to spend time this past decade. Everyone could enjoy these crazes no matter where you came from. There were fasts in the 20s for the young and old. Mahjong was a great source of entertainment for older people. Different types of communities were built around it. It brought people together instead of tearing them apart. Some people have played this game with the same people for years and have seen them through a lot. All the young lions, on the other hand, enjoy flagpole sitting and dance marathons. No matter how old you are now, there's a fast for everyone. Attaboy to whoever created these flats. I wonder why quizzes are ahead for us in the 1930s. And now to Cheyenne with a word from our sponsor.
Hello, my name is Cheyenne, and I have a product that'll change your life. Introducing the Hoover Vacuum. Dolls, are you sick of wasting all those times slowly picking up crumbs and bits when you could use the new and improved Hoover? The Hoover can do it all in no time with its electric sweeping. And with all the time you could save, you could go to that new place down the street. As long as you remember the password, when you start using the Hoover Vacuum, you'll get stuck on it. It could all be yours for $38.95. Now to Jack.
Thanks, Cheyenne. I bet everyone will buy a vacuum right after this program. I'm Jack Hannigan with a summary of the great sports events in the 1920s. This decade may have had economic downfall, but it was very strong in athletes. Famous baseball stars Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig were some of the greatest highlights of the 20s. They were sitting pretty in those years. I'll start with a big cheese himself, Babe Ruth. 19 years old in 1914, this egg began his major league pitching for the Boston Red Sox. In the 1920s, he had 467 home runs and 714 home runs in his entire career. No baseball stars had more of an impact than this nifty star. He was the real McCoy. But in Babe's shadow, Lou Gehrig was probably the greatest major league first baseman ever. In 1927, Lou had 47 home runs for the New York Yankees. Lou Gehrig may have been stuck behind Babe Ruth, but he played in 2,130 games and hit around 23 grand slams. The two athletes were very great, even though there are many more athletes who were in their prime during this decade. This broadcast gave a moment of appreciation to some of the greatest stars, stories, and athletes in the 1920s. This is Jack Hannigan, tuning out of Studio 404.
Valencia, where the orange trees forever stand for green.
This last decade, the Roaring 20s has been full of creativity. Industry has boomed and created inventions that are the cat's meow. And now a word from our sponsors. Ren here. Are you looking for a faster way of transportation? Are you wasting your precious time walking or biking everywhere? Well, the new safe, comfortable Ford Model T automobile is the bee's knees. These King cars will make your life easier. The Ford Model T automobile is spacious and will get you where you need to go. Traveling long distances will be easier than ever before. If you buy the Model T, transporting cargo will be a breeze. Also, the Model T will save you time on your way to the talkies. Automobiles will make getting together with your fellows and dolls fast and easy. Do you live in the suburbs? Is commuting to work long and hard? Well, the new Model T will get you to your destination a lot faster than biking or walking. Get yours today for $300. These lower-cost vehicles are made possible through mass production processes resulting in affordable cars. Can't pay the outright fees of these automobiles? No problem. Buy now, pay later. The Ford Motor Company dealership allows you to pay off your bill in small amounts every month in installment plans. These methods of payment allows automobiles to be accessible to almost all Americans and allows money not to be a problem at all. Be an owner of a popular automobile just like 15 million other car owners in the U.S. Get your Ford Model T today at the Ford Motor Company. And now to pop culture.
Hello, Zanaya here. Mary Pickford has finally ditched Owen Moore and has tied the knot once more. Tune in and we'll get right into the details. We all remember when Mary Pickford became an actress all the way back in 1898 and is still thriving strong today. While on set, she met now ex-husband Owen Moore. While on set, oh my, Hollywood Sweetheart has gotten hitched for a second time, and we're all still amazed at how well the world received it. Everyone out there has probably referred to them on the streets as the king and queen of Hollywood. Don't fret because they're having an extravagant party and inviting the public to their bountiful estate. And now to Connor with sports.
Today is a very special day. We are reviewing the golden age of sports, the 1920s, where all the sports craze started. We're talking about America's sport, baseball, and the White Sox scandal and how it all went down. We will talk about possibly the biggest scam the MLB has ever seen. It all began during the 1919 World Series when the Chicago White Sox played the Cincinnati Reds. All members except for 8 players on the White Sox hope to win. Eddie Sacco, Claude Williams, Arnold Gandel, Charles Risberg, George Weaver, Joe Jackson, Oscar Felsch, and Fred McMullen. All 8 of these players were involved in a bet/bribe. If they lost 5-3 in the series, all 8 players would earn $70,000 to $100,000. After the World Series ended, many Americans were suspicious and developed conspiracies because the White Sox were widely favored to win. The conspiracies then died down at the beginning of the 1920 season. A grand jury was then called to view allegations against gamblers trying to take over baseball. On September 28, 1920, 8 of the players admitted to throwing the World Series to gambling. All 8 players were suspended from baseball. The players stood trial in the summer of 1921 on August 3rd. The files of the players originally confessing were missing, most likely stolen. On August 4th, new baseball commissioner Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis banned all 8 players from playing professionally for life. And now back to Zanaya with the news.
If you have a weak stomach, right now would be the time to switch off. Some things I may say may come out upsetting. The Sacco Vanzanetti case began as a trial in 1921 of 2 people charged with committing a payroll robbery and the murder of a paymaster guard in South Braintree, Massachusetts. The execution has been set for today via electric chair after being charged with first-degree murder. Justice has been served.
Hi, I'm Matt from Studio 404, and I'm going to tell you of Bill Tilden and Helen Wills, who are totally changing the sport of tennis. Since their successes in the sport, many more people have been going to tennis matches and bringing huge crowds. During the Roaring 20s, the sport of tennis has risen because of rising stars Bill Tilden and Helen Wills, and also the cheaper prices of tennis events. Also, these stars have provided models of athleticism and expertness that appeal to their fellow citizens who are flocking to private and public courts in extraordinary numbers. Helen Wills started her career in 1923 and has won 8 Wimbledon titles and is a huge star in the 1920s. Also, during the 1920s, Bill Tilden almost single-handedly popularized the sport of tennis among the masses. Both players have changed tennis and made it a way more popular sport. And now to Megan to tell us about changing roles of women in society.
Thank you, Matt. The roles of Janes have really changed in society in the 1920s. It has been the decade of flappers and more independent women, but not everybody likes these changes. Some older women razz flappers as not modest and that women asking out men, drinking, and smoking is just hooey. Since we got the right to vote in 1920, society has become more and more accepting of independent women. The flapper is definitely a symbol of the 1920s, a popular style among young Janes known for their bobs, short skirts, dangling beads, and their independent attitudes. Now people are more accepting of tomatoes asking out men and independent working women. More tomatoes are working and making strides in women's rights. The amount of women working also rose from 8.3 million to 10.6 billion. That's right, billion in the 1920s. But we need to use our right to vote, Janes. We still are limited on the number of hours we can work and not allowed to work at night in many states. Other states also banned Janes from carrying mail, working in mines, and operating elevators. Many people thought that these laws were a good thing and that they protected tomatoes. But feminists have some beef with this legislation and think that it limits employment of women. We still have a long way to go to reach full equality, Janes, but we have made some huge strides in the 1920s. And now a word from our sponsor, Ella.
Janes, are you tired of sitting outside in the sun having to brush your hair until it is dry? Or having to use the air from vacuums to dry your hair? Now, with hair dryers, you won't ever have to again. This product is so great to own because it is handheld, portable, and produces heat to dry your hair easily. All the flappers out there with the bob, do you want to get to the speakeasy in a jiffy? Using the hairdryer might just be the answers to your problems. This hairdryer is only 11 rubes, and you better get it while it's still hot. And now to Dustin on his Go Monkey trial.
Thank you, Ella, for that wonderful advertisement. Now, does anyone remember the biggest court case of the decade from 1925? Well, I do. This court case was held in July 1925 in the town of Dayton, Tennessee. John T. Scopes, a substitute teacher, was accused of violating Tennessee's Butler Act, which stated you could not teach evolution in schools. Clarence Darrow famously defended Scopes, while William Jennings Bryan prosecuted for the state of Tennessee. Scopes was found guilty and was fined $100. His lawyers appealed the verdict into the Tennessee Supreme Court, and the teacher was cleared on a technicality in 1927. Because of the case, Dayton, Tennessee became very popular from around the world. Reporters from all important newspapers flocked to the small town. Many readers were very intrigued with the story as well. In the courthouse, while the trial was in place, there was the first ever broadcast court trial in American history. Thank you, and now here's the Charleston.
Hello, this is Connor Donnelly with Studio 404. Our story starts today with the unforgettable, daring, perilous tale of the aeronaut Charles Lindbergh. When he was only 25 in May of 1928, he was the first man to ever fly all the way across the Atlantic. Throughout history, mankind has been obsessed with flight, and now Lindbergh has flown across the Atlantic in this decade. Soon after this incredible feat performed by Lindbergh, Amelia Earhart followed up his feat in 1928 as the first woman to ever fly across the Atlantic. The doll Amelia is soon planning to attempt a solo flight this year. But that's not all. Ever daring, the big cheese Lindbergh himself went and got a custom-made one-tank plane called the Spirit. Truly, the decade has been a great one for the advancement of aeronautics across the globe. And now, next up is Kate with our sports section.
Hi, everybody. I'm here to remind everyone about one of the greatest baseball players of the decade. Who can forget Babe Ruth and all of his accomplishments in the 1920s? Level with me. Is he or is he not the greatest? Babe Ruth was a tough pitcher for the Red Sox, and he was very successful, winning 87 games and losing only 44. The next year, he was sold to the Yankees. That coach was a sap. Babe Ruth and his team averaged hits of .307. Their team won 110 games, and they lost 44 games. The team has a winning percentage of .147. Ruth changed how people thought of baseball and made the game more dramatic and fun for spectators to watch. Because of his personality, he made baseball more popular. And now to Georgia, our sponsor.
Fellas, with your wives waitressing and nursing, your daughters working in the kitchen, and you working in the factories, everybody is bound to get hurt once in a while. Take care of the whole family with Band-Aids. Johnson & Johnson bring to you a nifty way to take care of cuts and burns. For only 40 cents per package, this unique product uses Crolene to keep the medical tape sticky and the gauze clean. Whether you're working construction or making food for loved ones, Band-Aids will stay on all day. I promise you, this product is worth your scratch. Now to Corey with a pop culture recap.
And now with a look back at the popular music of the decade. By the late 1920s, jazz was the most popular dance music. African-American musicians were touring worldwide. Not everyone liked this new music, though. The swing era was more popular with everyone. All you young people were jitterbugging to the sound of great bands such as Armstrong, In other news, a great new dance is on the rise called the Charleston. Some believe that the dance originated with African Americans who were living on a small island near Charleston, South Carolina.
Today we're going to be doing a recap of the 1920s. This is Emma here, and I will begin with one of the biggest killjoys of this roaring decade, the stock market crash in October. The cause of the collapse is said to be because people were buying in the stock market with credit and overspending on luxury goods with money they didn't have. By the end of October 29, 1929, the stock market lost $25 million. Ever since then, it is now known as Black Tuesday. Even though we lost a lot of Bazuma, industries like steel mills and communication facilities were not affected by the crash, but the Europeans were. The American financial system is linked to the European system, which means they were heavily affected as well. What will our new president do to fix this? And now to Ella to our pop culture reports.
Thank you, Emma. Hey, I'm Ella Dunning, and we're looking at pop culture in the 1920s. At first, automobiles were just a luxury. They were never necessary. There was a dislike of automobiles because of the traffic accidents. In 1924, they took more than 20,000 lives in the United States alone. Soon, more congestion in the streets grew because of the pedestrians interfering. There was also free access to the streets without any rules, and that slowed transportation down by causing adverse economic effects. In 1923, a smart fellow named Ernest Goodrich went to address the U.S. Conference on City Planning. He said that the street capacity can be increased effectively by regulating traffic. In 1913, the Big Trees, Henry Ford opened his assembly line. The only problem was World War I slowed down the growth of automobile ownership. However, in the 1920s, the automobile became the bee's knees in Americans' everyday life. There was about 6.8 million people in automobiles in the late 1919 in a country with about 105 million people. In the 1920s, housing industry was booming, with 767,000 houses built in 1922 alone. In 1925, 1,048,000 homes were constructed. Bungalow homes in the 1920s were sold for only $3,000 to $10,000 kale. Because of this, people wanted to buy more automobiles so they could get around in the suburban areas. And now a word from our sponsors.
Hello, I'm Camden. Do you want to be seen in a jalopy or luxurious Ford Model T? The Model T is a great car for a cheap price of only $300 to $350. 40 to 45 miles per hour that's fast, right? The use of this automobile makes you look like a cat's meow. The car uses foot pedals instead of normal levers. Be stylish, be the best. Be the Model T. This is the real McCoy. The Tin Lizzie is the automobile of tomorrow, so don't get stuck in the yesterday.
It has been a golden age for American sports. People all over playing all types of different sports. As baseball is a national pastime, Babe Ruth has the record for the most home runs. Notre Dame, almost everyone's favorite team, went to the Rose Bowl, and baby grand Jack Dempsey, one of the most known heavyweight champions, all make up this amazing era. During this decade, many sports were enjoyed like tennis, ice hockey, golf, and swimming, but although they were a worldwide success, none were as popular as baseball, basketball, football, and boxing, which are the most popular sports in America these past years. Different places like Madison Square Garden and Yankee Stadium were built, letting thousands of people to watch their favorite sports live. Babe Ruth played many games in Yankee Stadium, and thousands of people came to watch. Jack Dempsey did matches in Madison Square Garden, as well as many other sports being played in these stadiums. Thank you for listening.
The story we're speaking of today is sure to be a memorable one. Today we're speaking of the athletes that ruled and dominated the 1920s world of sports. These athletes changed the sporting world as we know it, so be sure to stay tuned for our spectacular stories. Today we're going to be talking about Bobby Jones. Bobby Jones is by far the most influential golfer of the decade and possibly even the greatest golfer to ever live. But to all my listeners out there, you're probably asking yourself, what makes Bobby Jones the greatest golfer of all time? Well, everyone stay tuned as I'm about to tell you all. As we all know, Bobby Jones dominated the 1920s golf game. Although he played professional golf for only 14 years, Bobby Jones made sure he made the most of it, winning 23 out of the 52 tournaments he played in. Bobby Jones truly revolutionized the game of golf, and today leaves behind a legacy that is looked up upon by many golfers. Ladies and gentlemen, to justify that to you, Bobby Jones won almost half the tournaments he played in over the 14 years he played professional golf. Now that the decade's almost over, Bobby Jones has announced his retirement from golf in 1930. And it's safe to say Jones made the most of his career. We wish Bobby Jones the best in his retirement, and thank you for tuning in today on our sports story. And now a word from our sponsors.
Coming now from upstate New York, George Eastman invents the new Kodak Anastagman, taking our traditional film cameras to the next level. The camera features a superior lens that features a Kodak ball-bearing shutter, and another feature for dating and titling film at time of exposure. Kodak Anastagmatic, with focal length of 152 millimeters and maximum aperture of f6.3. Anastagma is the generic name of a class of lenses, indicating the lens has been corrected for spherical aberration, coma, and anastigmatism. Whether you're a camera geek, a drugstore cowboy trying to pick out some dolls, or just want to take the family photo, the camera is a dart and will save you lots of dough for a cheap price of just $25. And now to Ruth with the latest fashion trends.
This is Ruth from Studio 404 coming to you with the latest news on the fashion trend that has all the women dancing, flappers, and what influenced these amazing creations. One of the greatest influences of flappers include jazz music, the change in the role women have in a family and society. After years of fighting for suffrage, the 19th Amendment of the Constitution granted women the right to vote in 1920. The number of women in the workforce also increased during this period. This made us women feel like more than housewives and gave us the courage to go have fun in a cute floppy dress. And the music of jazz has contributed a lot to this. Women wanted to look good while showing off their amazing dance moves. And now to Zuri with the latest news.
Hello everyone, this is Zori, Studio 44. Our important news today is one that will stay on everyone's mind forever and forever change the fate of America and its government. This is the Palmer Raids. As many people know, there was a flood of immigrants that came to America in the 1920s. With them, they brought radical ideas such as communism, socialism, beliefs in anarchy. This caused the Red Scare, which terrorized the heart of America as they felt scared and defenseless against this threat. To counteract the incoming threat, the Attorney General issued a series of raids that targeted immigrants exclusively and tried to eliminate radicalism. These raids were soon to be known as the Palmer Raids due to the general's name. These raids happened every day. Overall, Palmer Raids were designed in order to prevent the spread of anarchy and keep order and law in the United States, but this inadvertently harmed the United States. But these raids were not ordinary raids, as they would show intolerance and fascism as they ruthlessly would deport or dismantle anyone who threatened what they called Americanism. In these raids, the very civil rights that protected people were violated and being sacrificed for what? Protecting us? Giving so-called America a safe place and a place of liberty? Thank you for listening. Here's a break.
Thanks for tuning in today to Studio 404. Wishing you all the best for the next decade.